This episode of Nuff Said is brought to you by Tweaked Audio. To get awesome headphones, go to tweakedaudio.com and use the coupon code Southgate to get 30% off, free shipping, and a lifetime warranty. Or you can get there through the link on our website, southgatemediagroup.com.
Are you sorry? Are you heartfully sorry for all of your sins? Well, it doesn't matter, for now is the time of your just punishment. Hello, my fair penitents, and welcome once again to Just Punishments. I'm your host, Charlie the Professor Esser, and with me, as always, is my svelte, wealthy friend.
It's Mozz.
Hello, Mozz. So glad you're back once again for tonight's episode, Season 2, Episode 6, Nakazat. Amy, formerly Rachel, develops photographs that point to a conspiracy. Russo reads his own report. Madini's story about Russo comes under fire. Our director this week is Jamie M. Dagg. Of course, Jerry Conway and John Romita Sr. and Ross Andrew get our Marvel Comics created by credits this week. Steve Lightfoot gets our created by for the series. Christine Boylan gets our written by. And our executive story editor is Angela Lamanna. And what is an executive without someone underneath them? That would be Ken Christensen, our story editor. Okay, so this is a neat episode. We're opening up with our Punisher at
And his brand new sidekick.
And his brand new sidekick, yes. Who, not for nothing, is definitely, I mean, if you ever want to see what mansplaining is, the Punisher saying, I could just kick in the door at the solid steel reinforced door. It's like, you're not really helping either your argument or anything else right now, Punisher. Yeah. But, of course, they need to get these pictures developed, and apparently, rather than, honestly, I'm not 100% sure what the system they would do to develop these would be. But I know there are ways you can scan a negative into a computer, and then, basically they need some free software to handle this, and maybe a laptop. But, Amy recently got a laptop, so that should have worked out for her. But anyway, they decided the most effective way to get these pictures developed, is to go to a guy with a photo studio for the express purpose of underground sex photography.
Right, and he doesn't care what you do.
He does not care.
That guy was ridiculous.
Well, to be fair, it's like, look, the person, and not for nothing, between these two, this is clearly a woman who's come of her own accord.
Right.
And for what it's worth, like, the minute he sees the Punisher, he says, no way in heck, and he closes the door. It's like, no, I'm not dealing with this. I have no idea what you're doing, but I want no part of it.
Right. I mean, and you could, being in that business, you could read people pretty well, and you could read the Punisher real easy saying, yeah, I want no part of you.
Exactly, because not for nothing, first off, okay, this guy deals with this. Here's what you can tell about this. Is this guy's a guy who deals with the scum of the earth? And the Punisher at his door, even with a nice bit of trim next to him, says, you know what, whatever you're into, I'm not. Which means that his argument about, hey, I don't judge, it's really, I don't judge you once you get in the door.
Right. Once you're a paying customer.
Yeah, I mean, you could argue maybe he thought the Punisher was a cop.
Right.
But
or just a dangerous-looking person who,
Yeah, honestly, yeah. He looked like a guy who's about to roll him. And honestly, that he got so played by Amy, kind of suggests that maybe, maybe he's not as good of a judge of character as he thought.
Right. Indeed.
But this is neat. I mean, it's a good thing that Amy, for some reason, knows how to develop photography. Because that is
true.
kind of a really esoteric skill.
Indeed.
It's like I actually grew up at a time of photography and have actually been in a dark room and seen pictures be developed. I could not develop photographs if you gave me your stuff and all the chemicals needed.
Right.
It's like I could not do this thing that she very expertly does, which is kind of impressive.
Yeah, but it's either impressive or confusing.
Well, yes. I mean, it's what it is here's what it comes down to. You can make the argument that clearly she has knowledge of this field. Why she has knowledge of this field, it's not a hard thing to create a reason why she does it. Maybe her junior high, because I'm sure she went through junior high at least, if not high school, had a photography club. That she was involved in things that dealt with this stuff. I can imagine that to be the case.
Yeah.
Or just because she's as part of this scam, clearly they do take pictures of people. Or as Tristan says, maybe it's comic book logic.
I like that too.
Yeah, well, but it is. I mean, it worked out okay, and what it comes down to is it's not so weird that she knows how to develop film, and to be fair, she's not developing film; she's making prints, and those are two separate actions.
Interesting.
Because we already have a negative. Once you have the negative, it is arguably, if you've seen it done, it is just bringing the negative into focus on the piece of paper.
Right, but while it's in, I don't know. I don't know if there were negatives in there or if it was an actual roll that hadn't been developed yet.
No, there was negatives, and we see that because when she takes out the negative, you see that she has negatives.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which also means you could have held up the negatives to the light and you could have seen what they were, but obviously it's a little harder to see, in that structure. But so they were negatives as she's going in, and although, and this is one of these weird little things for me. It's like clearly they were negatives. They were print negatives, meaning they were flat, meaning that they had been processed essentially by a developer and made flat, rather than as we see them prior to this rolled into a tube, because they were in a tube before, but when you see her holding them, they are flat.
Gotcha.
And technically they shouldn't have been, but that again is comic book logic. So
right.
And after this guy gets beaten up by the Punisher, just because the Punisher feels like beating people up, they do develop the photos. The guy goes for a shotgun under his couch in this storyline, which, I don't think is that ridiculous as things go.
Yeah.
I mean, I can imagine him thinking he could get the drop on this guy who just beat the crud out of him. But part of me thinks that was not the time to do it. It's like he should have waited for a better, more opportune moment.
Right.
Maintained the gun in reach, but not necessarily gone for it, and waited for the guy to actually drop his guard for a second. But he probably has a concussion, so you can't really fault him for that.
Right. And he probably doesn't have very much experience with it either, because he has a moment where he has the gun in his hand and he doesn't shoot.
Which comes back later about a guy with a gun in his hand, when the Punisher is trying to teach Amy what you do when you disarm him.
Right. That's true.
So it's like, you can't, if you have a gun, you cannot hesitate in this moment.
Right.
That he who hesitates is lost, quite literally.
Indeed.
So they do develop it, and the Punisher, of course, wants to kill the guy who runs the studio, the photographer, because not for nothing, he is relatively evil.
Right, but like to him, every person is every crime is punishable by death. It's crazy.
Well, to be fair, I mean, we've gotten past the days when the Punisher used to shoot litterers, which he did at one point.
That's insane.
Well, they retconned it by saying, oh, this evil conspiracy was trying to drug him to drive him insane, yada, yada, yada. I don't think he had to drive very far, is I guess my point. Yeah, no, it's a very this was actually kind of the important plot line point in the Punisher face heel turn was him like threatening to murder a litter bug in Central Park.
Threatening to.
Threatening, and that's how he gets arrested and he goes on trial, and then it eventually comes out that no, he was actually being drugged, and this was all part of this conspiracy to.
Wow, a Manchurian Punisher.
Yeah, basically, yes.
The dangerous idea.
Yeah, well, really it is.
Well, he's a dangerous person regardless, I guess.
Well, yeah. So, anyway, back to this actual story.
Right.
That's going to be for season 3 on Hulu next year, or in 3 years' time.
Right.
So where was I? So they get the photos and they realize, oh, it's of 2 men kissing. Because what is more controversial in 2019 than 2 men kissing?
Oh no.
Yeah, I mean they do give a little bit of a soft cover for it. It's like, well, it's either if the scandal doesn't bring them down, the fact that they covered up would bring them down. It's like, have you heard of a politician by the name of Donald Trump? I don't think anything.
Right.
If you're committed to this running for president thing, I don't think this is the scandal that's going to bring you down.
Right. Even with the red base, apparently.
Yeah, well, not for nothing. Not for nothing. I don't think that's the case. Yeah, it is. But you know what? To be fair, this is a hyper-religious cult that's trying to press this thing, so they may be drinking their own Kool-Aid on that. So the idea being that, well, like you and I might know this wouldn't derail you, but these guys they don't know because they're too in their own bubble.
Right.
And so they don't realize, how damaging or how not damaging all this storyline is. So, and we find out that the person who, speaking of Donald Trump, who is trying to bring this all to bear is a Russian oligarch seeking to have some compromise on this possible
presidential candidate
who doesn't even have a Senate seat yet, to be fair. So it's like, I mean, you want to talk about some long game KGB or FSB planning here. This guy isn't even a Senate candidate yet.
Right.
But they know he's being groomed at, so they want to get their compromise in early. Yeah. Well, I think, for what it's worth, the American psyche does love a conspiracy because we'd like to believe that we are, gifted by God, and the only thing that could derail us are larger forces of evil conspiring against us. So, but in this case, it turns out to be true. And I love Amy really running this con because you can see how much better at this she is than Frank, I think. As far as planning and executing and getting them to the position they have to be. Now, once they're there, it's Frank's skills that give them
at least the threat of his skills that elicits cooperation, you know?
Well, exactly. And although, for what it's worth, Frank is not happy about this,
Right.
He's had to let two people he would really like to kill not be dead right now. Technically three, because he didn't kill the guy at the Russian mob boss at the gym either, That was Pilgrim in that case. And it is grating on his nature that in order to solve this problem, he has to make compromises. And, compromises are what he's mad about, but at the same time, compromises are what actually allow you to move forward with your actions.
Right.
I always make the comment, the Punisher is bad at his job because the Kingpin still lives. And it is, it's like literally, if you are a guy who says, I will kill all the organized crime figures, there is one that he doesn't even try to kill. And it becomes this thing where it's like, come on, man. It's like, is this your job or is this not your job? And, he can kill 100, Russian mobsters you never heard of, but he never actually goes for the head. And, because at the end of the day, he is bad at his job, because at the end of the day, he can't compromise enough to get to the point where he could actually be successful at his job. It is a convoluted story, that of the Punisher. Oh,
what a shame.
Yes. But we get, and again, I really love the Amy and Punisher scenes in this when Amy is talking to the Punisher about his daughter.
Yeah. She seems to be like pushing his buttons for some reason, either because she enjoys that she can, but I mean, like, it seems I can't figure out what her motivation is in pushing that, on him so hard.
Oh, well, I mean, I guess to me, I always took it as, I think she is at her base someone who really does want to help this guy.
Huh.
And like when he says, let your daughter live in your head.
Yeah.
I think that's very much about the fact that, look, your daughter would have this life if not for what happened.
Right.
Don't kill her a second time by not thinking of her.
No, but I think it's a really either foolhardy or incredibly cruel thing to say to somebody in that point, because it's like constantly being reminded of the thing she would have been. Oh my God, what a horrible thing it is. Now I have to think about, oh, she would have been doing this. Oh, she didn't get to. What a horrible thing this is.
Well, but I think there's the aspect of that as well, which is like, maybe even, right now in your mind, she is perfect. Let her have a life where she's not. Recognize that, yes, she would be out with boys right now. That this would be her entire thing. And yeah, that would be so frustrating. And
no, not that would be so frustrating, but it's so frustrating that she didn't get to. How do you not have that thought without having the second thought immediately afterwards and lamenting it and killing and beating yourself up over it? I think it's a really, really cruel thing to say to somebody.
Well, I guess there's two ways to look at it, and to be fair, you're right. As the old saying goes, I won't necessarily disagree with you as much as I will agree with what I just said. That's a Dr. Katz quote. It's that he needs to. What it really is he needs to move on.
Right, but how do you move on by constantly saying, "Oh, this is what she would have been doing"? You know what I mean?
Well, because you recognize what it is recognizing that whatever you thought she was as a child, that's not what she was. Whatever perfection you imagined your child being and having, that was just your fantasy. And at the end of the day, what holds the Punisher in place is his rage, because he's too afraid to actually face the complexities of his relationship with his wife, his relationship with his kids. There is a great comic series out right now, which is called Cosmic Ghost Rider Destroys Marvel History. And as the plotline is that basically the Punisher, after he has died as an old man, he is released by Odin from Valhalla because he's kind of a jerk in Valhalla even. And he eventually gains the powers of the Ghost Rider, and he becomes the Cosmic Ghost Rider, and yada yada yada, whole plot line. But anyway, right now it's him going back to his life, and you get this cool thing where he's talking to his son Frank Jr., who is this little snot-nosed jerk of a kid in his underwear and a cape, running around, and it's like it is totally not the perfect family on a perfect Sunday picnic that we've normally been given of Frank Jr. This is Frank Jr. as just a randomized, 6-year-old kid who's totally causing his own chaos in his wake. And it's beautiful and delightful, and you definitely see Frank in these moments happy to be a part of it.
Right.
But at the same time, at its deeper level, it's like, Frank has for so long held this perfect picture of his family, and maybe there's more to it than that. And as Amy is running her con in this, as they go to meet the oligarch who ran this whole thing, we do see this idea that, this guy, likewise, I bet, he has breakfast with his daughter every day at this specific diner.
Right.
And no doubt pats himself on the back for being the greatest dad in the world. And when Amy essentially lets, and it's like I said, it's beautiful the way she runs it. It is some Ocean's 11 stuff here. Just, shows the picture, then walks away. And as she's walking away, she turns herself into one of the girls from the local school.
No, it was expertly done. I was just watching a video on YouTube where they're interviewing this CIA a person who was in charge of disguises, and she described it this exact sort of moment. I guess they do it in a lot of movies, but the quick change, it was beautiful.
Yeah,
and they must know that school would have been letting it at that time. She crossed that corner, and there'd be a ton of girls dressed as that,
Exactly, and just goes to show how little people are really paying attention to what they're looking for.
Right.
Because it was like, it's a blonde girl with, a white shirt and a skirt.
A black skirt, yeah.
Yeah, and then they change the color of the skirt, and she lets down her hair, and suddenly she is going to this school.
Well, it's not even their fault. It's the human mind is trained to, be goal-oriented. And if you're looking for someone, your brain is going to pick out the 2 or 3 things that are most distinctive against the background and just focus on those, just simply because it's, it's easier and more efficient.
Exactly. And they certainly play that. They take advantage of that, which I'm sure, it's a good question about, is that Amy or is that the Punisher? I think that's mostly Amy.
Yeah,
I think it's mostly Amy who's saying, here's how you run a con. Here's how you do this. And you see the Punisher essentially, accomplishing what he needs to. He gets the oligarch. And I love how resigned the oligarch is to all of this.
Right. He's like, it's almost like people like that resign themselves to this fate at one time or another, right from the get-go.
Yeah, well, yes, without a doubt. He definitely. Well, I love his story, about the guy who was, how his father made him watch the guy who was killed by his village, and this is what happens. And his father's moral was, this is what happens to evil men, but the moral he took is, no, this is what happens to you if you don't have power.
Right.
Which is probably in its own self more true than anything else, which is that, it's like if you don't have power, there were probably many cruel men in that village, but this was the man who was easy to step upon. And, he, basically, he says, look, I know you're going to kill me, and that's fine. Just, not in the face, because I want to have an open casket. And then, the Punisher, he feels he doesn't want to do it because he knows this guy has a family. And, everyone has a family, but it's like now it's been made real.
Right. Definitely was a Martha moment where he says, you have a daughter.
Yeah. Well, not for nothing. Not for nothing. That's why, I don't want to call it a Martha moment because the Martha moment was unearned. This is earned.
Right. Fair enough.
This is because we know who these characters are.
Right.
It's not just like, what? Your wife's name is this too? Well, then, gee, I guess I can't murder you. It's like, it's not about showing the emotional weakness. It's about showing the emotional complexity of both characters. Because one character is like, is ready to die, and the other character is ready to kill him, but he understands his actions will have more consequences than he wants to admit, and
it's relative to the ending of the episode. I guess it's a moot point.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, it's always a moot point because there are people that are going to follow up with this stuff later, but I like him basically saying, and it's like, it is interesting because he knows he is morally compromising himself. But at the same time, he can't bring himself to move. He is forced to accept the humanity of the people he kills. And, I think, this is this idea that when you're a soldier, at the core of it is always that, you know what? I don't acknowledge your humanity. If I'm killing you, it's because you're here to be killed. And this, I think, is the inherent law in the Punisher's creation, is that because it is a ground war within a society, he's never behind enemy lines.
Right.
He's never, or to be more specific, he's never on the other side of enemy lines. He's always in this place where everyone is a human being.
Right.
The most recent Captain America, there is a whole point about where they are referencing, when Captain America was a beat cop for a while. And he made this point, it's like, look, I learned that for every criminal that I put away, there was some mom who cried over him. There was some brother, some sister. And he says, it doesn't make me soft, but it does make me understand that there are different types of villains in the world. And as Captain America points out, I like punching Nazis, and these guys aren't Nazis. These guys are just criminals.
Right.
So, and it's interesting that, of course, in this case, the Punisher is being faced with a guy who is an oligarch, who is a guy who no doubt has more than his share of red on his ledger. And he knows that, but the Punisher is still going to show mercy because at the end of the day, he can't bring himself to punish the kid who has to deal with his father's murder because of what the father did.
Right.
And it eats up the Punisher in his own way, too. And he does mention this letter about all the people he's had to let live recently that he normally would not have. But I think that makes it a very interesting episode, just that whole quality there. Now we have another side note this episode with Madani and Billy.
Right. Billy has a nice little moment with the psychiatrist, but also with Curtis. That moment with Curtis was awesome.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Well, yes. This is when they're in the bar, correct?
No, well, he runs up on Curtis in the parking lot.
Oh, Okay. Yeah, I'm sorry. I think I missed that. I'm forgetting that thing. Tell me what happens, Ma.
So Curtis is going to his car, and obviously has his gun with him. And I think what he learns about Curtis's name, or he knew Curtis, or maybe he learns how to find him from his file. But he runs up on him with the mask on, and he goes, "Hey, is that gun for me?" And he goes, "Yeah." And he asks him, he goes, "Tell me who did this to me." And Curtis says, "I don't." He doesn't say I don't. He says, I wish I could tell you."
Mm-hmm.
And to him, that meant, I guess, I don't know, he said, "I never meant to hurt you. So, and would you believe me if I was sorry?" And all those things I think he really did mean. But at the same time, further in the episode, you see him, he can't help but be his animalistic self also.
Well, yeah, and I'm getting Madani and I'm getting everyone confused here. So yes, is that
And
Madani?
with this psychiatrist lady that he's living with, he
Yes. Well,
sort of runs up on her in her room while she's changing and lingers for a second.
Yeah.
But she didn't seem too bothered by it the next day,
Well, it's a question about who's lingering there. Is it her or is it him?
Oh, that's true too.
Because it's like she sees him and he's staring,
Yeah.
and she's sort of staring him back.
Right.
But yes, the scene with Curtis is great, and for what it's worth, I think that there's a point when he asks Curtis, who did this to me. It's like, I think Curtis really wants to say, who do you think did it? You did it to yourself.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who pushed your face through the glass, man. You're the one who made the choices. And I think it was last episode he made the point. It's like, Billy is as natural a Marine as anybody except maybe Frank. It was the greed when he got home that turned him this way.
Yeah.
That it wasn't the army and the war that screwed him up. It was coming home. The coming home where, and for its worth, you can talk about the grind of capitalism there. It's like, that is a war even greater than fighting and dying in a foreign land, that when you come home and suddenly what defines you is how much money did you make for the investors this week. Suddenly the urge to be a good soldier can warp you into an evil man.
Yeah, but to me, I don't even think it was essentially just the greed. It's the loss of purpose. And you see that in his conversations with the other former soldiers that are feeling that loss of purpose. And, and that's why they're so enthralled by trying to help their friend get his car back from the towing guy.
Yeah.
And I think that's something they fall victim to also. And I think it points to how we don't take care of our veterans and don't recognize what their true needs are when they get back. And I think that's kind of what they're hinting at too.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot of things you can take in this. You can even go a little, when we deal with the guy who needs his glasses.
Right.
And how excited he is over a pair of glasses. And Curtis trying to help him, saying, you can appeal that less than honorable discharge, you can do this and that. But he doesn't want to. He just sort of wants to be in his own place,
Mm-hmm.
It's like anything that's going to require the effort's going to make him feel like, he can't get to where he wants to be. And I think that's an interesting aspect of the story.
Mm-hmm.
All of the, this is a story of a lot of people dealing with their psychological traumas. And, you can, I think, especially with, and I forget the character's name. I forget the actor's name too, but, the one who needed the glasses, that I think there's sort of the implication here. It's like, it's not the war per se that's the problem. It's the having to live your life with feet in more than one world.
Right.
To have something expected of you in one world and have something less than that expected in the world you're in. And to have yourself, essentially have to deal with the fact that, you aren't you aren't going to have an easy road to hoe with this life. You know, for what it's worth, you know, you find that maybe the men who have had the who have reached the highest point are much more relaxed in their final moments. You know,
Yeah.
when you look at the oligarch, he's like fine, you know, at least it's over.
Yeah.
Whereas those who are in a more desperate situation, it's like it can't be over yet.
Mm.
Because I've never had that moment to really shine. But
Right.
I mean, I don't know. I mean, those are my thoughts on tonight's episode. Maz, do you have any final thoughts on your end, or is there anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't gotten to yet?
The scene with Pilgrim and Madani, do you think he was there to take a shot, or was he there just to learn something? And if so, do you think he got the information he wanted, or what did you take out of that scene?
Oh, well, that scene, it's a very interesting. You know, and it's an interesting question with Pilgrim. Is he being self-destructive, or is he just so certain?
Right. Or is he dropping some nugget of information to Madani to see what she does with it?
Well, here's the thing. Obviously, he knows, and I think we're getting into a bit of next episode here, where they did the same thing for him that they did with Frank, which is that he disappeared. He simply stopped existing.
Right. And that's why I was thinking that maybe he was a military guy.
He could be. He could, you know, like I said, there's any number of things he could be. Most likely he's some sort of black ops guy, you know.
Right. And again, it was again pointing to that whole thing of a soldier coming back and needing that sort of mission-driven purpose.
Well, exactly. You know, and for what it's worth, yes, definitely there's a quality to this that is, he is a man who has been through what he's had to be through, and is now working to get to the next place, and is, you know, arguably believing that he is protected, but at the same time desperately fearful of losing it.
Right.
You know, I mean, for what it's worth, the oligarch, when he accepts the Punisher's punishment, he knows at the end of the day his family isn't going to lose anything. You know, they're already, you know, rich as can be.
Right.
His daughter will finish her college, you know, her high school, and then go on to college. There are trust funds in place. Everyone is taken care of. So at that point, if he dies, it's like, okay, you know, I guess that's fair.
Yeah.
You know, I did what I needed to do. And for a guy like Pilgrim, who never had the opportunity to be the oligarch, because at the end of the day, he is just a soldier.
Right.
Lives in constant fear that tomorrow his benefactors will take away what they've given.
And even though I think he's probably more stressed about the fact that his wife is maybe going to die before he finishes his mission here.
Well, exactly, you know, because then he doesn't get to go home and be with her.
Right.
You know, and if there's something, you know, that is to be said, it is simply that he doesn't want to be away from her when she needs him.
Yeah.
And, you know, because at the end of the day, everybody, even Pilgrim, has these people they care about. And, you know, when Pilgrim takes off his hat to let her take a better picture,
yeah,
you know, on one level it is taunting, but on a deeper level, maybe it is him saying, you know, end it, you know, much in the way the oligarch did. It's just like saying, it's okay, you know, if you can end this, then you can end it, you know.
Yeah.
I've done what I needed to do, and I think my kids and my wife will be okay. If this helps you, then okay, you know.
That's really interesting.
Well, I mean, that's just one possibility. I mean, there's a lot of obviously there's lots of possibilities, and we'll find out all of them more next week, I think, as we continue on slogging our way to episode 13 of The Punisher. Mozz, in the meantime, if people would like to reach out to you, how can they do so?
Well, they can find me on Facebook under Mozz Manzor, or email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. That's MOZZMANZOOR.
And, of course, you can always write to me at old-fashioned email, whether Mozz and Pause once did at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's super connectivityblog, all one word, at gmail.com. And of course, follow me on Twitter as I live tweet Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. or Cloak and Dagger, or whatever else I feel like, at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the two E's in for quality. I stepped on your line, Mozz. I'm sorry about that. Okay.
We'll get it right one day.
One of these days. Often we do, but.
I know.
Oh, penitence. You now wear the white robes of those who have been. Your sins are forgiven, and you may go in peace to sin no more. But you will, and when you do, return here for your just punishments. Good night.